Media.
The following episode has graphic descriptions of violence, including abuse of a minor, and may be disturbing for some listeners.
Then I get the word that our real dad's been found and we're going to go live with him. He's got a place in Colorado and we're just going to stay at until we're ready to make the trip up to Alaska.
So he comes down to meet me in Colorado. So I drive over to Colorado and I meet him there. And we rented a place for a couple months.
So I remember when we got on an airplane, flew out to Colorado, and we landed, and this guy comes out, and unlike the guys that she dated, didn't have the vibe of a nice guy at all. Like literally from our first walking up to him. There was no parental bond or anything like that, or there was no run up and hug your kid or your kid run up and hug you or anything like that. It was just like, this is your dad, you know. And he was, very stern-faced individual, like, okay, let's get in the truck, you know.
And now, the story of a family reunion with a pet wolf and my stepmother Shirley driving the car. I'm Amanda Fallon, and this is the Shirley You Can't Be Serious podcast.
When we got to the place where we were going to be staying, the first thing that happens is this big wolf dog runs out from underneath the truck that's there in the driveway as we're getting out of the car, ready to eat us at the end of a chain, you know, and he is smugly like, that's your dog. And I'm like, okay. We had a little Chihuahua thing as a pet, you know, and here's this big wolf dog comes out. Now, of course, that wolf dog would become my best friend in the years to come. And Colorado, hateful place, a crappy little adobe house on an Indian reservation, and it was an Indian school. And we were the only two white kids, and probably the only reason we didn't get destroyed was the wolf dog. You know, literally. And because it was kind of like a taboo thing amongst the local natives, this wolf dog.
Bad omen, right?
Yeah, and they looked at us as a bad omen, but they kind of left us alone because of this wolf dog. I could safely walk home from school, you know, and whatnot. But the native kids didn't want nothing to do with, you know, a couple of white kids, you know. But fortunately, we were just there to finish out our school. And at the end of the school year, you know, so finish out my second grade.
So anyway, so now he's up in Alaska under his different name because the police are looking for Ed Carroll, so now he's going under the name of Jim Edwards. And he said it was real easy to get a social security card.
Really?
He just said, yeah, the hospital that he was born in burned down and they don't have any records, and yeah, they gave him a social security card.
Wow.
Without any background information.
And this is what, the late 1960s?
Yeah, the late 60s, maybe early 70s by this time. You know, the kids are going into second grade and third grade. So they had finished first and second grade. So anyway, like an idiot, and now I got to tell my parents. Now his mom has died by this time. She died not even.
So how many years has passed then since you told the family that he was dead, and now you decide to go back?
About 3 years.
Okay.
At least 3 to 4 years.
And has it been 3 years since you've seen him?
Yes, because he's been gone. Yeah. So anyway, so then I have to tell him, oh, I heard from Ed. He actually didn't die, and He's, oh my God, my mom was so upset. My mom was so upset.
I can't imagine being on the other end of that phone call.
Oh.
Or, okay, honestly, I can't imagine making the phone call.
Yeah.
But to be on the other line, how could...
Yes.
Did your mom at all tell you to come back home?
Oh, I'm sure she did. I mean,
yeah,
you know,
like to stop, not go to Alaska,
actually,
but
my
to come
dad,
back home.
what my dad wanted to do, they had an extra lot beside their house, and they wanted to buy me a manufactured home, a trailer, and put it there, and I could live there.
So family's starting to sense the craziness of this whole.
You know, I mean, my mom was just a basket case when she heard this.
Well, the
So,
kids hadn't seen their dad in 3 years.
They thought their dad was dead.
Oh my, yeah,
You know.
3rd grade, 2nd grade. So what is that, 8 and 7 years old?
Yeah.
And they probably have hardly any memories of their dad, too, at this point.
True, at that point, yeah.
And then we had packed up the truck, and that was an adventure. It was like a 68 Ford truck with a homemade wooden camper shell. We had 2 vehicles in an old Ford Fairlane sedan, 60s, and those 2 cars were going to make it from Colorado up the Alcan Highway to Alaska.
There's a road that lies under northern skies toward the land of the midnight sun. It crosses the crest of the great Northwest, and it's known as the Alcan Run.
That was an adventure. Unfortunately for me, it was not a great adventure. Got to see just how old school my dad was. And now we had already figured this out because the first few days of living with him, it was like, I don't think he likes kids, right? You know, my sister and I, and unfortunately my sister's experience would be way worse than mine. But yeah, he was a scary character. He packed up that old beat up truck, you know, hit the road, and you know, you're staying at campgrounds on your way up and off to the side of the road and things like that.
And then we drive up to Alaska. The truck was full of stuff. And I had never driven a Standard before. I learned the day before we left to drive a Standard. Ed tried to teach me, and he had no patience with me at all. He was screaming and yelling at me. Finally, the 15-year-old teenager that lived in the neighborhood taught me how to drive a Standard. And I drove it all the way to Alaska following him. So I have the 2 kids in the car, and I have the 1 dog. He has the truck towing a truck that doesn't work but has a bunch of our stuff in it. And because I had my, furniture and everything from the stuff I had bought after he had left and everything. Mm-hmm. So I had all, after we had accumulated after we, moved to California from South Africa. So anyway, I had quite a bit of furniture and stuff. I'm following him in the car, and he's driving the truck, and he has the 2 dogs that he had gotten in Alaska. And so anyway, I'm following him. And it's a long drive up the Alcan, which is what was about 1,200 miles of unpaved road at the time. We really didn't have much money, so we literally camped out all the way. We either slept in the car or we slept on the ground. We didn't have a tent. We just put sleeping bags on the ground and slept on the ground.
What time of year is this? Was there snow?
No, there was no snow at this time.
Early on in the journey, he sets up a little butane stove on the step bumper of the truck, and there's boiling water for hot dogs. And I wasn't paying attention. I went to sit down, and I sat down on the bumper, and I didn't see the handle on the pan, and sat down on it and flipped it onto my lap. And just horrifically, scalding, boiling hot water poured all over my leg. And of course I let out a blood-curdling scream, and my dad comes around, sees the hot dogs on the ground and spilt water, and immediately grabs a branch, drags me off, and beats the hell out of me for spilling the dinner. And it's a hard image to get out of your head, because I'm looking around and I see all these people, other people camped in the park ground, and they're all just kind of looking. But this is back in the day where if you beat the hell out of your kid, nobody said anything, and I remember making eye contact with all these different adults that just kind of were looking like, wow, because they could see that I was hurt. And he was just pissed that I knocked over the water, and as it turned out, it burned all the skin off of my leg. And every day when I'd wake up in the morning, my pant leg would be blood and pus and crusted to my the wound was like that big across the top of my leg. Should have gone to the hospital. It was 3rd-degree burns deep into the flesh, and I couldn't hardly walk on my leg. And every morning we'd pull up by a drainage ditch or a river, and he'd make me wade down into the river and let the water soak and loosen it from my leg so we could pull down my pants and clean it off, and never even got a Band-Aid for it. It was just wash it off and pull back your pants, and we're continuing on down the road. And I remember one part of the journey that I actually appreciated him for a moment, because I had fallen asleep in the pickup truck, and my face was into the vinyl seats, and I was dreaming, and I dreamt I was like a balloon man. I'm all like floating around, and everybody's kind of laughing at me, but I couldn't breathe, and that's how it was manifesting itself in the dream, and I'm like trying to tell everybody I can't breathe, quit laughing at the bouncy boy, and all of a sudden a hard, hey! Wake up, you all right? Because I guess I was gagging, and I woke up and I was like, oh, thank God you woke me up, because I thought I was gonna die. And that was probably like the first time and first moment that I had an appreciation for him. Okay.
And at one point, we got separated, and of course there's no cell phones. He had made a U-turn and went back for whatever reason. He didn't stop, he didn't wait to make sure I was following him. I had trouble making the U-turn because I had to go down a ravine and then up, and the stick shift, I couldn't get up. I kept sliding backwards, and by the time I got up, I couldn't find him. And I'd drive around and I don't see him anyplace. So I thought, okay, we were just a matter of miles from the Canadian border. So I thought, okay, I'll just go to the border and I'll just sit there and wait for him to come. I don't know what he's doing. But what happened, he was low on gas, and so he turned around to get some gas. Well, I had the money. So he gets to the gas station, he has no money, and he has no gas. And I'm sitting at the border. So I'm sitting there for hours, and he's sitting in the gas station. So luckily, he flagged down a car that was heading for the border, and told him, what I was driving. He said, if you see a woman at the border, tell her to come back. I need gas money, And so the guy saw me sitting there at the border, and then he comes back.
What was going through your head, though? Just sitting at the border
you know
for
what?
a few hours.
I thought, you know what? At that point, I should have either gone to Alaska by myself with the kid. I had the kids and the dog, or turned around and gone back home. Is what I should have done. So anyway, we got the gas, and then we got to Alaska. And then by then, we were so short on money, we literally lived in the car and in the truck for a whole month. We parked in a parking lot by a restaurant, and we never ate at the restaurant because we didn't have any money to eat there. But we would go in every day and wash off and, take sponge baths and stuff. And they never said anything to us, they would never said anything. But literally, it was a month. And then finally, we had money for a first month's rent, but that's all we had. And they wanted first month's rent, they wanted a deposit, and they wanted last month's rent, everybody. So fortunately, we found this little Oriental couple, and they felt sorry for us, and they let us move in and rent the house, with just paying that month's rent, and then we could catch up later on down the line.
So we made it up Alaska and rented this little house in Nunaka Valley, and enrolled me for 3rd grade, and he comes home with he bought parkas for us, my sister and I, and I reached for what I thought was mine, and it's like, no, and he hands that to my sister. It's red and with dark green checker pattern and on a fuzzy parka. It was fuzzy parkas. And then he hands me mine, which I thought was my sister's because it was white with purple squares all over it. Obvious total girls' code. That was my dad's idea. Because he said it pretty plainly. He looked at me from day one and was like, he's a blank pussy. And looked at my mom with a cousin because he was a bully growing up. And he's like, he plays with clay, he likes to draw. I'm one of those kind of kids. And he was just like, that's terrible. So, well, my mom was at work, and this is how, like I said, our perception of our mom is she was never there to protect us and actually put us in danger. And he, put me in that purple coat to send me to school, knowing I'm going to get hassled by it. And then to help things along the way in the summertime when my mom was at work and he was doing nothing and hanging out at the house for entertainment, he would pay the older kids in the neighborhood for fighting bouts in our front yard. You get $1 apiece for beating me up in my front yard. and to make matters worse, it's like if I lost, I had to fight the next fight in my underwear. So I had to strip down and fight in my underwear. And if I lost that fight, my sister had this big poofy white Cinderella dress. And so they'd put me in the Cinderella dress. And I'd have to work my way back to my underwear. And that was my 3rd grade summer. I remember one time him and his buddies are sitting in the backyard, and my dad was very much you kill it, you eat it. You don't kill things just to kill things. And they had their BB guns out and whatnot, and his friends, and their shit in our backyard. And we had a big backyard and full of trees and everything, and our wolf dogs tied up there. And they're shooting at the birds. And my dad was, and he kind of let me know. We'd talk a little bit here and there, but what was going on is he was shooting the branches out from underneath the birds to make them fly away on his turns, so because like he kind of like grumbled about it after they left, and expressing that, because like I say, it was big on him, they ain't gonna eat them, so why the hell are they shooting at them, kind of a thing, and then I could see the kind things that he did. Not that there were many, but they were there, and the humanity that was buried down in him. Even if it was something as simple as like, there was one time I go running down the stairs into our basement, and it's one of those that has a trap door, and you can't run jumping like that down, because when you get down towards the end there, that header caught me in the head this way. My feet went out from under me this way, landed and smashed. I still, to this day, have this, almost feels like a horn lump on my skull, where it broke my skull on the concrete floor. It hit it so hard. And to this day, I've got this giant lump of bone on the back of my skull there. And it was one of those moments, the blinding pain as a kid. And I remember my dad he had fortunately been there, I smash, and before I can totally freak out and scream and rail, and I grab my head and I'm stunned, and he looks down there and he yells at me, "You didn't crack my floor, did you?" And I immediately, "No, it's good." It's like, all right then, but it's exactly what I needed to hear in that moment so that I didn't totally lose it in panic, and there are other little things like that, and where there was a caring person in there. He just didn't know how to show it, and let alone how to live it, because it was so foreign to him and his upbringing. So like I said, I saw different sides of him that were soft, and saving an animal was the most more like our wolf dog. That's where I was going way back when. That wolf dog that we had has a story. The reason he was the runt of the litter, so it's not a huge wolf dog compared to normal, because it was the runt of the litter, and my dad had to bottle feed it. And but it was first generation wolf. When he was up there in Tok, Alaska, at the cabin, a wild wolf mated one of his female sled dogs. So he got a first gen set of pups, and this is the one that he kept. And he did that a few times because the hybrids make really good sled dogs. So he'd sell them as for sled dogs, because the wolf traits mixed with the husky, one of the things a wolf can do is it can control the temperature of its feet. So where normal dogs run out in the snow and they get all that snow packed in between their toes, it freezes, turns to ice, and get all clumped up, and you'll watch sled doggers with all the booties. Well, that's why they do that. But a wolf drops its pads down to just above freezing, and it doesn't get any snow collected in its toes and the guard hair and other things like that. But they're also smart and lazy, so he always had to be the lead dog, because if you put him in the line, there'd always be slack in his. It'd make all the other dogs work. The wolf was only good as a lead, because it didn't have any trouble leading, but it ain't gonna pull. let those crazy yippy huskies do that. But so there were good qualities in him, but they were never developed. Fortunately, when we got to fourth grade, we moved to Eagle River. He had been working on a house. It was a gutted, to-be-condemned house. Wouldn't even let my mom or any of us see it until after he'd done a bit of work cleaning things up. And so we moved into this old flat roof house. They actually got it to be, for a guy with one arm, I admired him because of all the things he could do. And it's like before we hit the road trip, one of the things we had to do is make sure the truck was ready to go. And he found out how useless I was as a helper, as a mechanic, because it's like he only has one hand, so he's trying to have me hold and help solder things and stuff like that, and that was unpleasant. But I remember marveling it's like he replaced the engine in this truck by himself, right, and did all kinds of mechanical work.
There was a point in time where Eddie bought a motorcycle, a Triumph, and Ed's got one arm, right?
Yeah.
Eddie takes that motorcycle and he drives it all the way up through to Alaska on that Alcan Highway with one arm. And then he turns around when he gets up there, he stays there just for a very short period of time, and he drove back.
And when we got up to Alaska, one of the things we did is we went and stayed he had built 3 cabins way out in Tok, and we actually had to follow a river for miles out into the woods from the last little stretch of pavement kind of a thing, way out in the middle of nowhere. So we spent a couple months out there before we came and settled in town. But he built 3 cabins by himself, one-armed man. And so I was, amazed. And that was where he had disappeared to during that time that everybody thought he was dead, as he was hiding out there in Alaska. And of course, he was always in trouble, taking the shortcuts. So it's like his story is a sad story, because it's like, he was smart, and able to do things, but always did the scheming thing. It's like half the time I remember him, he was always wearing one of those foam collars, because he would found out early on that if you let somebody hit you, you can sue them, you know. So he was constantly doing the schemes and whatnot. It's like, man, if you'd have just concentrated on steady plodding at a normal job, you'd have gotten somewhere in life, and just put all that scheming away. And that's one of the positive things I got, is that illustration, because my mom kind of freaked out because she had never told me anything about his young life, and I was kind of falling into all the same things. As I grew up through a teenager, you know, I got busted for stealing a car, and that's what put my dad in prison as a teenager, where he lost his arm on a attempted suicide. Not really, who knows. He managed to get a job. He faked that he had two arms because he had his, you know, prosthetic, the fake hand or the hook, and he put his fake hand on and bandaged it all up and did the interview, and you know, told him that, oh no, I just burned my hand, so it'd be fine here in no time, you know, and got hired on the pipeline, mostly driving trucks and whatnot up there.
Construction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline is almost complete. By the end of 1976, all 800 miles of mainline pipe were installed. Work was nearing the final stages at the several pump stations along the route.
So he gets a job on the pipeline under his different name, you know, because the police are looking for Ed Carroll, so now he's going under the name of Jim Edwards.
We loved it when he got the pipeline job, because he would be gone for 3 weeks. He'd come back to town for like 2 weeks, but that 2 weeks he was running off with his friends and whatnot, and my mom was always working, and but like I said, our life was better when we lived in the red house there in Eagle River, and that was kind of where my joy was, because like I said, he got a good job, so there was some money, so you know, it's not like we were super poor.
So he was making good money, and for the first time I was able to stay home with the kids, and I babysat. I had a couple kids. We lived right across the street from the school, so I had 5 kids that I was babysitting, one full-time and then a couple after school, you know. And so I was doing that. He was working on the pipeline. For the first time, things were really good financially.
And I'd come home after school, and he'd be making out with the babysitter on the couch, who was like 17, 18, lived next door. And didn't matter that I opened the door and come in. The most he does is sit back, but still has his arm around her, and she's all cuddled up. Yeah, babysitter. Teenage girl from next door. You know, but yeah, I'd come across that often, but it was good because that kept him distracted. You know, and I was already at that place where I'm just gonna come in, grab the key to the mini bike, gone. So that's what I did. As soon as I got home every day from school, grab the key, grab my mini bike, save my lunch money for gas money, and I was gone.
Ready to find freedom in the great outdoors? Unleash the new XR75 from Honda.
It was everything to me.
The mini bike built like a wild pony for the off-road.
Because it was my escape.
The XR75 forgets frills.
I could literally disappear at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Instead, it gives you the best of what you need to take on the rough terrain.
Not be seen again until 10 o'clock at night.
The Honda XR75 goes like it looks. It's totally wild.
They gave me the keys to my escape. And I remember, you know, I had a lot of hatred and animosity towards him.
Did you ever see your dad abusing your mom?
Other than the harsh language, right? Never saw him be physically, and she said, I'd have left. If he'd ever laid a hand on me, I'd have left. Well, how about your kids? You know, but.
Did she see the physical abuse with you and Crane, or was she always like,
Oh yeah, because that's the man's job, is to discipline the kids, right? You know, so it doesn't matter what he beats you with, and he had all kinds of different instruments, and she just acted like, well, that's normal. You do something wrong, well, if your dad decides you deserve a whooping you're gonna get. And so she just turned a blind eye to it. So like I said, we never really, it wasn't like we could run to mom out of fear of dad, you know, because she was gonna back him up. And that, at least that was our perception, because she never countermanded him on any corrections. Many a days my dad would lose it on us, and she had to see that from time to time, because the whooping that wasn't necessarily the worst part. It was getting to the kitchen to get whooped that could be more traumatic, because, you know, he'd grab me by the neck and just use my head as a battering ram down the hallway, just smash it to this wall, smash it to this wall as he walked me down the hallway, throw me in the kitchen. And then it was my job to drop my drawers, because, you know, no padding your underwear, no tricks, no nothing. He wants to see that bare butt, you know, when he whips you with the belt. And he had a wicked belt. I'm like, it doesn't even work as a belt. What is that? Like a saddle strap or something? It was 3 layers of leather riveted together with the ends both flopped. So you had like 3 pieces of leather, 2 were long and 1 was short in the middle. And I'm like, it has no buckle. I don't even know what it is. It's just a big leather strap. But, oh man, when he smack you with it, the extra slap, 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 you know, this heavy leather belt. The belt wasn't the worst thing. If you didn't find his belt that he liked to use, I hated that, was army cots. And they have the wooden piece, and it's got 3 holes at the end so you can adjust the tension on that wooden stick. I went to school with welts, circles on my butt all the dang time, where I couldn't barely sit down in my chair at school, and I'd look in the mirror at my butt, and it just riddled with circles and black and blue welts on my butt, and I hated that thing. And but he was like, you know, switches, doubled up garden hose. That was another particularly not fun thing to get hit with. And you get hit lots, and that was his problem. He had no anger management control, and so just stupid little things could just throw him. And I wouldn't say we got beat every night before bed, but pretty much it was just the routine. And like I said, my mom would be right there. One of the games they would play at night, and my mom would watch, you know, they'd be watching TV, and my dad had this game, and my sister actually would play this game. I'm like, he'd sit there with the BB gun and just a spring action, not a pump, you know. But we're in our pajamas, and he'd make a game of us running from the hallway bedroom to the bathroom hallway, right, and having to cut across there at the living room. And he'd give us like a nickel for every time you could make it across without getting shot. And my sister actually liked that game. You know, I'm trying to think of how we can get out of this game. And you're like, okay. I'm like, she has a bathrobe, so but she got to a place where she'd run across and learn not to yelp, and then claim that she made it across without getting hit, and get her nickel or dime. For me, when I got it, you know? And so I didn't make no money on this deal as a kid. So that's an evening at home with my mom and my dad, you know.
And but it was really weird. Whenever he would come home from the pipeline, he would never let me know when he was coming. He would work like 3 weeks on, 1 week off. And so, but he'd always come home late at night. You know, I never knew what time he was coming. He never had me pick him up at the airport or anything. And I remember one time he came in and he's looking all over the house, under the bed, and like I was hiding somebody there. You know, I thought, what the heck is wrong with you? It was like he was expecting that I had some boyfriend I had hid away or something, you know. And what I didn't know was he was the one who was having the affair.
And then ultimately he took off with like a 17-year-old girl. And he drove down to Tennessee with this 17-year-old girl, and the police were hunting for him for everything, for taking an underage girl.
But, you know, my mom got divorced, and, you know, he left us the house and took the motor home, and he had a 19-year-old Ann, and she was very, very soft-spoken, nice girl. And, you know, and I was just like, why would you be with this guy? You know, that's what I'm thinking, because you seem like a really nice person. And but only met her like maybe 2-3 times, and always just very much passing through.
When Ed left with Ann, there was a part of me that felt relieved. She took Ed away and ended up being my saving grace, you know.
And then he committed suicide, and this time he was dead.
Was the whole family like skeptical at first, though? Were they like, okay, wait,
oh
did
yeah,
Eddie
it's
really
like
dead this time?
Well, it's kind of like I want photos. You
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
You know, like I said, I don't know what the real stories are of anything, even his death. You know, I know the story they told me. I don't know if I buy it. You know, I think it went down a little differently. When I was in 7th grade, 8th grade, he died for real.
That's what we said. That's
Yeah.
the real one.
Yeah, so the for real death.
Today is Thursday, September 15th, 1977. Reverend Joseph T. Swanner will officiate at funeral services for Edward Barton Carroll, 32, at 8:30 p.m. tomorrow at Forest Lawn Memorial Chapel.
The pastor said he got his life right with the Lord, you know, blah, 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 trying to comfort you. And I remember when I went to the funeral, and when we walked in, the first thing I was amazed at is like, who are all these people? And why are they crying? But, you know, I was amazed at how many people were at this funeral, and it was an open casket, and I was there to make sure he's really dead, because I'd heard this before, right? As a kid, well, I want to see myself, you know. So I remember going up there, you know, to the open casket, and the hand, looking at his hand shriveled on his stomach, folded over, and looking at that hand, and seeing it weak. I'd always only known it strong and assertive, and seeing it feeble and weak, and the sense of satisfaction, never get hit by that hand again, and just cool. You know, as a little kid looking at my dead dad and seeing that hand's never gonna hit me again. And so I walked out of the funeral happy, satisfied, and just not understanding why everybody else seemed to be grieving.
Alaska State Medical Examiner's Office, Anchorage, Alaska.
Alaska Department of Health and Welfare, Bureau of Vital Statistics, Certificate of Death, Edward Barton Carroll. Date of death, September 15, 1977. Place of death, Fairbanks, Alaska. Married. Date of injury, August 27, 1977. Nature of violent death, gunshot to the abdomen, accident, suicide, homicide, undetermined, undetermined.
I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think happened to your dad?
I think he was fighting with his new wife, and she shot him. And in his arrogance and being some woman shot me kind of thing, no, I was cleaning my gun and it went off, and whatever story he was saying, it's like, nah, you were fighting, she got scared, and you got shot with her little 22. Because it's like, the only reason we had 22s, I had a 22 because he gave me a 22. That's the kid's gun. All of his guns are guns, 30-06s and rifles and Winchester lever action cowboy guns, It's like, yeah, if he was gonna kill himself, he had all the stuff he needed to do it right. He ain't gonna pick up the stupid 22 and shoot himself in the stomach. I was like, that's BS. And it just right away, I was just like, yeah, right.
When he died, she told me they were fighting over the gun and it went off. We all understood whatever it was that happened that day must have been Ed's fault. I stayed in contact with her for some time after that. She was a sweet person.
And then I hear in my mind is like, okay, I can see that, where they're arguing or fighting and she got scared and trying to defend herself kind of thing. And well, when the cops get here, I shot myself because there was a level of goodness in him, where the noble thing to do, is keep her out of trouble, because it's probably his fault they were fighting in the first place. Well, whatever.
Carroll was rushed to Fairbanks Memorial Hospital, where he later succumbed to complications of a gunshot wound. Born February 15, 1945 in West Virginia, Carroll died Tuesday after being hospitalized for 17 days. An Anchorage resident since 1970, he was employed as a mechanic and driver. He is survived by his wife, Ann of Anchorage, a son, Edward Jr., and a daughter, Coraine, both of Eagle River.
And it wasn't until, well after he died, we came on a trip back to Ohio where my mom took us to meet my grandpa, my dad's dad. And his wife had passed away, so I never met my real grandma on his side. And not that I would want to, because she was like, everybody knew she was a practicing witch at a time when, that stuff wasn't like very, nowadays it's like the Wiccans and all that kind of stuff, but this is way back, in the late 70s, and but she was known through the community, because they read tarot cards and do palm reading, stuff like that. So she was an actual witch, black magic practicing witch. And my grandfather was the evilest man I'd ever, to this day, met in my life. And when we sat down, he had us come over and he started sharing stories of when my dad was a kid. And I remember when I left that, every ounce of animosity that I had towards my dad, gone, because I walked away and telling myself, my dad didn't stand a snowball's chance in hell at turning out like a normal human being with that monster for a father. And this guy just spent the last 3 hours gloating over his torturous life that he created for my dad as a boy growing up, and boasting the whole way through it.
Eddie's dad used to beat that kid with his fist until he couldn't even walk. Oh yeah, his dad was the most brutal person that you could ever meet.
And I was just like, wow. And suddenly after that, everything my dad ever did, negative, washed away. So that was very, very good that we got to do that. My sister, unfortunately, she'll never heal, ever. She had it worse than I did. And like I said, my mom's right there through. Now, she didn't know about me getting beat up. She didn't know about that, but it's not like my sister and I could go to my mom because she was never there to begin with. Now that you, it's like, no, I'm amazed that you were able to find Anne. And I had always wanted to see her again. More so, it wasn't about what really happened. No, I was more, you were such a sweet girl. I have no idea why you fell for my dad. But I was always curious, because technically she's probably just a handful of years older than me. I would say 67. Yeah, so she is about 7 years older than me.
Really?
Yeah, so when he brought home this 19-year-old girl, you know, I'm a budding teenage boy. So I was just like, oh, she's pretty. I would love to talk to her. One, because like I said before, of who I saw her as all those years ago when she married my dad, this very young, innocent person and incredibly soft-spoken person, and just way too kind and gentle a person to be around somebody like my dad with his incredibly rough edges, you know. And so the tragedy of his death, like I said, definitely not her fault. And I would love to be able to just see how she's doing, because I always wondered, because I'm sure it must have been hard, but I never heard anything. And then also, I always wanted to touch base with her because, from what I understand, she was the one who took his ashes out to the cabin. And she's the only one who knows where it is.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. Anne is not available at this time.
We found Anne online and made several attempts to connect with her. She eventually blocked us. Coming up next time.
Most of the people I dated had come there for the pipeline.
Next thing I know, they're getting married.
The journal, I gave it to the police. They made a copy of it and gave it back. And I don't think I ever looked at it after that. First year we were together, second year Iceland, third year we were together, fourth year prison.
They had apparently found a map inside the glove box in the airplane that had X's on it